Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I think we're going to get started now. My name is Valerus VMS, and I'm the Director of Marketing at Vicon. Vicon has been a leading provider of mission-critical security surveillance systems since 1967, and today we are focused on providing solutions that have been engineered not just for performance and features, but for simplicity and deployment, operation, and maintenance. Our goal is to reduce security solutions complexity, ensuring a superior experience. Today we are presenting Vicon's Valeris VMS version 1.2, new features that enhance system performance. It will be presented by Guy Arazi, the Director of Product Management here at Vicon. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during our presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel, as we will have time for some questions at the end of the presentation. Now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Guy Arazi.
Thank you, Dolores. I appreciate the introduction. It's great to be speaking to all of you today, and let's get started. What we're going to do today is go through a quick introduction of Valeris for those of you who don't know the system. And we'll give a demo that will focus on the highlights and the new features we've added in Valeris 1.2, which we've recently released for everyone. We'll show also our powerful integrated performance of Valeris and our VAX access control system, see how these two work together. And last, talk about the tiers and licensing and what you need to do to get your system upgraded and going on Valeris. Few words about Vicon. For those of you who don't know, we've been around for a lot of time, and as Dolores said, we've been in business since 1967 and went through every iteration of video, and pretty much everybody in the security business has worked with us before. We went back to the drawing board a while ago to create Valeris, and we had a pretty simple mission in mind that we want to do something different. And what's different about VMS 1.2? We know that the VMSs out there, and there's many of those, are pretty complex and not to say pretty confusing. And because of the time it took to develop them and the different features and functions, we thought that it doesn't need to be this way. We can take back simplicity into the equation and make the user's lives much easier than it is today. So we have a few users, and when we say easy, we want to make it easy on all of the different users. We want to make it easy to install for those people who actually go in and put the system in and have to do it at the littlest time and biggest efficiency. We want to make it easy to use for anybody using the system, whether it's the operator at the end of the line or the person programming the system or somebody administering it and needing to make changes. We also wanted and succeeded to create a true standards-based open platform. We've chosen to use the ONVIF standard as our leading standard in Valeris, instead of having to develop proprietary drivers where you as users are going to be dependent on us keeping up and maintaining them. We've created an advanced design and flexibility and allowed the system to be very, very scalable, as you see. We've also built it around a single license. The whole system uses one license. You don't have to run and differently register computers and servers in different places. There's one key, you own that software key, and that's what you use all the time. We provide free software updates and ensure backwards compatibility. I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation. And last but really not least, we all know we got to be cost effective. The prices that we offer today on Valeris, the channel prices that we bring to the market, are extremely competitive. And I encourage you to try us and see how well competitive these are. A few words about the topology, and I'm saying simple system and simplicity, but that does not mean this is a small system. Valeris was designed to be able to carry huge systems, citywide and airport-wide, and the big ones with no problem, but it is also compatible with the small and the medium-sized one. And that's part of the beauty here, that the same platform can be deployed at different size systems without any problem. Basic system topology and the components. We have as an application server that runs all the system business logic. This is really the brains of the system, has all the global information, the users and things like that. Multiple recording servers can be used. If it's one for a small system or hundreds for a larger one, that doesn't matter. There can be many, many of these. Our administration and our viewing client, and that's one of the differentiators for Valeris, are web-based. We do not have a thick client. We always install a thin client, which means you open your browser, you browse to the system, and that's all you need. No installations, no maintenance, nothing at all. And of course, in our days, you can't do without a mobile client, and we have both for Android and Apple, both on the respective stores. So what we're going to look at today, talking about Valeris version 1.2, I'd like to show you really a snapshot of the new features, and I'm not going to go through every one of the smaller features. There's quite a bit of those in this version, and I encourage everyone to go on our website and look at the release notes that are there right with the software for download and see everything that we've added in 1.2. We will focus on some of the new stuff like powerful search options. I'm going to show you what we added for searches and being able to go back into the video. Built-in de-warping for hemispheric cameras. That's a pretty neat feature. Advanced viewing controls, enhanced health dashboard that you'll see, support for new IT standards such as IPv6 and HTTPS secure browsing and encryption. And the nature of the security business, we need to support CCTV keypads as well as PLC external controls. I'm going to show you how that works. So I'm jumping right here onto the Valeris screen. For those of you who haven't used or seen Valeris before, this is just my browser window. This is logged in already, and I'm starting by going into configuration, showing you a few things we added under the hood, and I'll continue from there. I'll be going back and forth a little bit. First here under NVRs, we added a category for what's the expected retention of the system. This is not how much you want to record. This is how much you designed your system to record. So as you do your system design and you know you want to achieve a certain number of days for recording, that's how we determine how many NVRs. Let's say we want to have 14 days. That's what we plugged into the storage calculator, and that's how we know how many terabytes we're looking to have in the system. By putting in this parameter and saying, I would like to get 0 for any number of days, whatever you can do for me, or like here 14 in this example, we're telling the system that's my expectation. That's what I designed the system to do. And you'll see later on how we use this piece of information to provide you with excellent statistics on what's going on with the system. I'm going to continue and get back to that a little later when we talk about the dashboard. Another add-on here, in video channels, we added a snapshot that is taken from every one of the cameras as they get installed. This snapshot has two great uses. One is that when I see the camera, I very, very often know what it is without even having to look at the name. And you know that in many systems, the name doesn't necessarily represent exactly where it is, or the people using it don't necessarily know what northeast corner means. The other great use for a snapshot like that is if I turn on my live view like that, I can now have a comparison between where the camera is looking at right now and what it looked at when I put it in place, focused it, pointed it, and then saved the snapshot. And I know if the camera was moved, if it's out of focus, and if something changed there that I need to know about. The next thing I want to show you is the hemispheric cameras, and I call it fisheye here. Let's talk for a second about what these hemispheric cameras are, what does fisheye mean for us. These cameras have been around for a while, but the level of resolution that was offered by them wasn't necessarily high enough to be able to extract enough data. So a fisheye would let you de-warp the image on the camera itself. And now when the images are much higher, this image that you'll see, and I'm going to go to live view in a second to show you how it looks, is a 12 megapixel camera, which allows you a pretty deep dive into the picture when you do that. The problem is when you look at the fisheye image, and I'll move to my 360 tab that we added up here, you need a way to look at it closer and not just this round view. So I'll enable 360 mode for this camera, and you can see that we've partnered with Immervision, who's the leading lens manufacturer for these hemispheric lenses and cameras. And what they allow us to do right now with the D-Warp is actually zoom into the picture like this. It stretches the picture around, and I can also move around in the picture. I also can call up different built-in presets, like look at the perimeter, a 180 view, and a quad. You know, I'm going to show you that in a minute, how it looks on the big screen. It's going to make much more sense. We always record big picture. That means this is an ePTZ, and I can save presets exactly in the same way I do that on a PTZ camera. So now I can select another view and save another preset, and later I can call those presets up. What's nice here, unlike a PTZ camera, is that when I save presets, I still record the whole image. So I can look at the preset, and I can still go back and look at an area in the picture that the camera wasn't pointing at, like a PTZ would. I'm going to save this and jump into monitoring and put this up full screen so you can see how powerful this D-Warp option is. We start with a fisheye view, and I'm going to dive in like this, but also go up left and right in the picture. So you can really walk around in the whole view. If I go back to these presets that we just created, number one was that fisheye that we did, and number two, remember that we did it a second ago, is this one. I can see those. And the built-in views, I'll put up my favorite, which is the quad, allows you to get on that one screen. I can here take every quadrant, point it in a different direction, and look at different objects. For situational awareness, for lobbies, for places like that, this is huge. Imagine if you have this camera hanging in a lobby of a hotel, and you can look at the different areas and move it around without having to do any kind of PTZing around it. It's always recording. You can do it live and playback. Super strong. Next thing I want to talk about is the search tab. This tab, for those of you who've seen Valeris 1.1, was added in this version, and everything in there was added in this version. We added 3 searches: thumbnail search, museum search, and event framework search. Let's take a deeper look at thumbnail search, and I'll explain what that's typically used for. So thumbnail search is really a great way to go back to a long period of time and do a search for something that happened during that time and is visually detectable. The best example I can give you for that would be, let's say that you were looking at the parking lot, and somebody says, you know, within the last 3 hours, 6 hours, 1 hour, whatever long time period, we're looking for a blue car that drove by. If we try and play back just to look at blue cars, it's going to take us a while to go through the video. If we do motion search, it will catch every car that goes by. If we do something like thumbnail search, you'll see how we can take a snapshot every few minutes, see the car, and then zoom in on that object and find what we're looking for pretty quickly. Even if there's a few blue cars, we can find them around. Thumbnail search is available, as you can see on the list here, for all the cameras that we have in Valeris. So no matter if it's a Vicon camera or a third-party camera, we can search them all. Let's pick one and see how it looks. You can see I have a calendar. The default time is 3 hours. I can make changes to that if I want. I'm going to pull up the 3 hours, and you're going to see that it's going to take my start time and end time and equally divide a snapshot every given few minutes. So we're starting here at 10:19, ending at 1:19, 3 hours, and you see it's about 11 minutes between every picture. On the right side, you can see I can change the grid if I want larger pictures or smaller or more thumbnails or less. Take a larger one here, and we're going to equally divide it every time we do it. If I need to make changes, change the camera, or let's make a change here, change the time spent. We'll take an hour instead of 3. It's all very easily accessible. You don't have to leave the screen, and it's going to, again, realign them. Here's a great example of the blue car we're looking for. It's in this second picture. It's not in the first picture. So obviously it drove in somewhere between the two, which is right now narrowed down to about 9 minutes. So if I now want to narrow down the search again, I'll hover over this white arrow in the middle there. I can say by clicking it, just align and redistribute the pictures between these two times. It's very easy to do, or I can just select from the start and end. Let's do the two adjacent pictures like that. And we can see that our blue car right now is in that last frame. So obviously it drove from the one before into the other one. I can keep redistributing until I see where it came from exactly, or in this case I can just double click it and I'm going to get the big Valeris player to show here. I can get my full playback controls, go back and forth and do everything I need. On the left, I still have all my results. So if I saw a couple of blue cars, if I needed to do something and go back to the search and change things, I can do it right from here. But I can also start my digital zoom, take a closer look at the car. Maybe I can see something better. Maybe we'll see the driver. In this case, no. I can start video export from here if I want to take the clip out and export it. Or I can do full playback control from my timeline below. Go back, go forth, go anywhere I need, go live if I need to. So very easy to find something that's visually seen over there and to be able to extract the information from it. I'll proceed with the next search, which is museum search. And museum search is a little different. Museum search is something, well, I'll use the best example that gave it its name. If you have pictures hanging in the museum on the wall and the picture disappeared, if I had to put somebody in front of this system and have them watch, let's say, the weekend's video, and it was going to take them a long time to see who came over and who removed the picture and when did it happen. Museum search is also seen somewhere places as pixel search or motion search, and it allows us to define a certain region and say to the system, please scan and tell me every time changes happened in that region. So in our museum example, that would be anytime somebody moved in front of that camera, maybe in front of the picture. Maybe it took the picture off the wall, maybe it did not, but I want to isolate it. Museum search, unlike thumbnail search, works on Vicon cameras. Vicon cameras have a built-in algorithm in there that allows detecting that motion as we transmit the video to Valeris, and this will give you a very, very fast and efficient search. You'll see that when I do the search right now. Same time selector as before, 3 hours is the default. You can change it to whatever number of minutes you need. Let's make a little change here. And what we open up with here is not thumbnails, but we open up with a reference frame so we can draw the region of interest. You see all the tools here on the right. We can show a grid if we need to. We can remove it. We have different paint brushes and different colors that we can use to highlight the region of interest. We can play and change the time of the episode we're looking for or the object size relevant. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to just highlight this area in front of the door so we can see every time somebody approached the door, somebody or someone. See how fast we're going to start pulling pictures from the database and showing them on the left. And all the results are going to show on the left. And you can scroll down and find your person of interest in this case, or the time that the picture was removed from the wall in our museum. Once you see it, you can hit it, and it's going to play in the same player, in the same manner that you've seen before when we did the thumbnail search. So we can see the person approaching. We can pause the image. We can, again, go back up and open our digital zoom tool and take a closer look at the person. We can export the video clip right from here, like we've done before. And it's all very, very simple and intuitive. Last one is really a big one, and I'm going to touch on it really quickly. This one is what we call the Valeris Events Framework. And what this framework allows us is to integrate with external systems that generate events. And those events are transaction-based. You can see in the list here that we have different types of systems: banking, ATMs, license plate readers, point of sale cash registers, things like that. What's common to all of them is that whenever something happens, somebody drives into the parking lot and we read the license plate, there's a transaction that says, read the license plate, here's the time, here's the date, here's the plate number that I read. Sometimes there's a gate or a direction information, and we can use that information to later on search when somebody comes over and says, you know, I'm looking for a car that drove into the lot and it had partial plate ABC. Or I'm looking for a transaction that happened on the cash register that used a $100 bill. So the search engine, and I'm going to use the HTS license plate recognition system here as an example because that's what I'm running in the lab. We can pull up from the database the different parameters, time and date to search through, and I can add some fields if I want, different fields obviously for different systems. A license plate reader will have different fields than an access control panel. And I can run a report on my database and say, show me all the times that we got those reads and those events and transactions. So you can see all the information in the table here. I can take one of these, click on expand and get the little summary of the plate read and the lane ID and other information. And I can also click on it to open the cameras on the right. And what we're doing here is we're opening something very unique. Instead of just overlaying text on the picture like many others do, and the problem with that is obviously when you overlay text, that text sometimes hides what you want to look at. We take the camera covering, in this case, the overview camera, and we take the event information like you see here, and we create a video channel out of it. So this becomes like a camera. It's being recorded like a camera. It's being synchronized time-wise with the overhead camera, so we can see a nice big picture here. We can play them back together. We can synchronize them. And down below, I just opened the web link there for the weather in Hauppauge in our head office. But this could be your procedures for a blacklisted car. It can be something else. It can be another camera covering the exit, for example. The beauty of doing this video-wise is that it doesn't disturb the recording. It doesn't cover anything. And you can go and see it live or play back whenever you need to do that without being dependent on the database. I'd like to show you how that looks on our monitoring page so it makes a little more sense for you. And I'm going to do that. I'll pull that same camera to the monitoring page so you can see it. Let's do that. So let's do it full screen here and pull that exact same camera. I call it an event camera. And you can see it saying waiting for input. This is what the operator can see while the camera didn't read the plate. This is all out of a simulator, of course. But you can see whenever the camera has a read, it's being shown on the video feed as if it's a camera. Waiting for input, no cars coming in. A read of the car plate, a car is coming in. So this is a very visual way. I can start playback. I can go back and see, well, what was that other car that just came in, as well as go to the database like we shown on the search page and say, I would like to see all the times where the car with this plate went through the gate. So very, very powerful and very flexible because it integrates with much more than this classic example. This can be an ATM. This can be a cash register machine. It can be an access control door. Next here, but not a small item for us, as Vicon has been working in the detention industry for a lot of time, since the analog days actually, we realized the need for many, many operators to still use what we refer to as a CCTV keypad. This is very common. Using a keypad would be very common in places where the operator doesn't have a keyboard or mouse, because we don't want him to minimize the application. We don't want him to accidentally shut down Windows. We don't want to do have him play solitaire instead of use the system. So we don't want to give him a keyboard and mouse. We give him a CCTV keypad and allow him to call up cameras and use the joystick to move the PTZs. Another great example for that would be in detention facilities where, again, the operators have their own human-machine interface. They have touch screens with big icons, open cell, closed cell, open rec room, and places like that. And they only control the VMS or the Valeris client in this case from their interface. To be able to do that, we need to give a very simple and very clean interface to do these camera call-ups. And that's been done way before. Vicon has been doing that with the analog matrix for years and years. We've been doing that with our former platform, with Valeris, for years and years. And now we've started doing that with Valeris 1.2 on the Valeris client. So what I'd like to show you is a few items that we added to make this possible. First, the most important is to be able to say this workstation, this client running Valeris, is going to be controlled by some kind of interface. Whether it's a keypad or a PLC, it's really not very different. And you can see we added in the user settings here a setting for keypad and PLC, which may or may not be put on a certain workstation. We can enable this, and when we do that, we get a list of all the different options that we have for these interfaces, whether it's through the serial port, the COM port, or over TCP, over IP. And we've also added support to be able to allow migration from our Vicon system to Valeris. We added support for the Vicon keypad. So depending on the device I pick, like a TCP device will ask for a port. If I ask for a serial device, it's going to ask for all the different serial parameters like the COM port and baud rate and bits and parity, all these things, and IP keypad for port, and so on. Another important add-on for supporting PLC and keypads is if you don't have a keyboard and mouse, and let's say your computer reboots, you can't log in if you don't have a keyboard to type in your password. So we added an option here to auto login. We can say if this machine for some reason reboots, auto login to Valeris, and we can turn it on, provide the user and password to use for that auto login, and decide whether we want to return to the last display or not. But that's another pretty important piece when you don't have a mouse and keyboard. Jumping a little bit back into configuration, I want to show you another important piece for this, and that will conclude, or almost conclude that. Numeric IDs. When we use keypads and PLCs, we don't call up the cameras by their name. The keypad has only numbers. We got to give these cameras, the views, the tours, everything that we have on the system, we got to give it a number so we can say, start that resource. So you see here on one screen, all the resources are showing in one list. Very easy to do that. Go in and assign them with whatever number the design dictates. And one thing that we do here is we make sure that if there's any kind of duplicate number, like I'm going to put 4 again, you can see that we highlight them red, and we're not going to let you save a duplicate number because obviously if we have the same number for 2 different resources, we never know which one we want to call up. Being on the same screen makes it very easy, and we can save it. And now I'm going to go back to monitoring. You're going to see that for those who actually look at the screen, we have the numbers here. And that leads me to actually say some people will say if I have a keyboard, a CCV keypad, or if I have a PLC controlling the system, I might as well just remove all the user interface, and I'm going to go full screen like this. And I'll have on my different monitors, I'm going to have the full grid, and I'll do my camera call-ups without even seeing the mouse, using the mouse, or seeing any kind of UI, like you would do with the old analog matrix, or with Vicon in this case. All these together are actually pretty important if we want to be able to run our PLCs and our keypads on the system. Let's talk about the dashboard. So those of you who've seen Valeris 1.1 have seen a dashboard already, and we've had this health dashboard in that version already. This is a very, very clean and simplified way to look at the system health. You can see that for the different components, the application server and the NVRs and the cameras, as we click them, we'll get below there only a list of what's wrong with the system. If everything is nice and green and healthy, we're not going to show you a list. If it's not, we'll show you the errors and the warnings so you can see which device has which problem. And it always gives you an indication of what's not working instead of just telling you, oh, this is working and putting up too much clutter on the screen. What we've added in 1.2 is a statistical model. So I can choose, instead of looking at the health form, I can change to this tab below, and I went to statistics, and you'll see that we're giving some graphical representation of what's going on with the system. Let's look at this graph by graph. I'm going to make this graph a little bigger so you can see what's going on. And we're right now looking at the application server statistics. So we're really saying for the system right now, how many NVRs do we have? And how many cameras do I have on each NVR? 24 on one and 7 on 2. This is excellent for load balancing. You want to see how the cameras are distributed across your NVRs. The other graph, again for the whole system, is showing how did we distribute different cameras around it. I'm looking at different models. This is the lab system here at Vicon, so we have a lot of different models, but typically in a normal system, let's call it, you have 4 or 5 different models of cameras. This allows you to see from each different vendor and model how many cameras do you have in the system on a nice looking pie chart. I'm switching to the NVR here, and we can see that when I open the NVR, I'm giving a list. I'm starting with a list. And these are the 2 NVRs that I have in my system. You see the name that I gave them. We're showing the last time these connected to the system, last uptime, in August 17th in this case, how much storage is assigned to these, and how many channels of video and audio are being recorded. Now I can click on one of these NVRs and expand it to detailed statistics. Let's look at these one by one. Top left there. How many devices, how many cameras or encoders are assigned by model to each NVR? Again, load balancing wise, this is pretty important information. If I put all my 5 megapixel models on one NVR and the others on the other, or I need to mix and match and see where load comes from and how many are in each different NVR, this is a super easy tool to do that. If I know I have all my 12 megapixel cameras on one NVR and it's recording less time, I know how to move it to others. Next graph is, I would say, my favorite statistics here. This pie chart shows you by video channel which one is taking how much in percent as well as in gigabytes storage from the NVR. So we can see that we have one camera here. This is our camera event 1, taking 16% of the storage on that NVR, another one doing 13%, another doing 8%, which might be absolutely fine. That 16% can be my top megapixel camera, which will naturally chew a lot of bandwidth, but it might be a camera that's not supposed to do that. There's maybe too much motion, maybe it's not set to the right frame rate. This is an excellent indicator to be able to know what's going on. And even if it's doing what it's supposed to, if I need to load balance between different NVRs, I know which models are the one taking more storage, which ones I might want to move to another NVR. Here, we're showing a graph of the bandwidth that's being recorded on our NVR. And you can see it daily, like here, and you can see the hours and what was recorded, or weekly, which will give you an excellent look at what the trends are. And you can see here on August 15th, there was a jump. In my case, I know I added some cameras and everything is fine, and I expected it, but it might be something that surprises you and tells you that something in our configuration changed, or maybe there's more motion than we anticipated. And last is a graph that shows us where we are against specs. So our NVR specs tells us how many cameras and how much bandwidth an NVR can handle. And we distinguish between standard, which is just regular drive, and RAID drive. And on our regular drive NVRs, we allow up to 70 cameras. You can see where it's 62, the graph is blue, we're within range. We allow up to 200 megabits per second, and we're doing 65, so again, we're within range, and it's great. If I switch to RAID, you'll see that from 100 and 300, we're well within range. If we exceeded one of these, and we know we need to move cameras around to other NVRs, this would be your easiest way to know after you move cameras, before you move cameras, who has room, who is now loaded, and how to balance the system. Let's look at the camera statistics. Again, when we open up cameras, you'll see that we open up a table of all the video channels in the system. So if it's encoders, by the way, we'll see them one after the other, all the channels, and I am using those. And you can see that we're showing the channel name. We're showing which NVR is recording it. What's recording method? Is it continuous? Is it event? What's the earliest recording? What's the latest recording for that channel? What's my expected recording? Which I have to remind you, when we started, we looked at the NVR. Remember, we had an option to say, what's my expected recording? We started with 0, which is the default, which is as much as you can. Record as much as you can. I'm fine with it. But I could have put a number there, and we put 14 as an example. Here you see we're back to 0. And I'm saying, basically, when I'm saying 0, I'm saying record as much as you can. The column after is telling us what's the estimated retention time. So the system now tells me at current rate, I estimate I can record up to 11 days for this channel. So I'm asking for 0, which means whatever you can, and I'm getting 11. That sounds pretty good. So last column there that's called retention health is going to show a green check mark for all of those. If I had my 14 days in there and we only can achieve 11 days, you would see a red X, and it would give you a very quick alert saying, hey, you're not going to make the design that you had. So if you design a system to 14 days, you're only going to get 11, you got a problem. You probably need to do something about it. I'm going to click on our camera here to show you what we have as statistics for the specific camera. Let's do that. And we can see two graphs. On the left there, recording our desired versus projected. We had 0 for desired. Let me make it a little bigger. And we had 11 projected. So you can see that the graph is fine. If this was the 14 and 11 days, we would see a red graph in its place. The other graph, the other option that we show for the camera is going back to bandwidth. So we saw bandwidth for the full NVR. This is bandwidth for the specific video channel, weekly or daily like before. And we can see two things. We can see how much bandwidth is being pulled from the camera, how much is being recorded for it. This is not necessarily the same, because cameras can have multiple streams, and we can be pulling multiples while recording one. So this will give you a very good way to look at how's the bandwidth behavior from a specific camera. Maybe I said it wrong and I'm pulling in too much bandwidth. Maybe I'm recording the wrong one, and allows you to easily debug what's going on. The Internet Gateway, which is our way to the Internet, has no statistics. And important to show that when we go back and forth, we remember the last screen. So if you want to keep graphs on there, instead of just health monitoring, you can do both and have it on a separated window. I'm jumping forward to our integration with our VAX access control, which is something that now works with Valeris. So for those of you not familiar with VAX, VAX is our Vicon access control platform. And that's a pretty unique platform, works with IP-based controllers on the edge and full web interface for management. So like Valeris, we have a full web interface, super easy to program, very easy to associate doors with cameras from Valeris, so you can pop them up when you have an event. Very easy to do a playback then and say, okay, I'd like to go through the list of events and pull the video right from Valeris and see it. And it's a single platform. It all works from one place. Just a remark version-wise, when we did release Valeris 1.2, the interface for VAX was updated to 2.9, and all of these programs, and I'm going to talk about upgrades again in a minute, are being offered on our website, and upgrades are not a chargeable item. You can go in and upgrade. I want to show you how this looks when we look at them together. So look at the VAX tab up here. I can click on it, and it's going to open the VAX window in a floating browser window. The reason we're doing that in a floating window is to allow the operator to move it to a different monitor, minimize it and go back to the video, minimize the video and go back to it. You could contain it in one of the tiles in Valeris if you wanted to, and if the size is good enough. I'm going to go ahead and swipe a card just so you can see on the right there how the information for the card swipe pops up, as well as the video from the camera we associated with it. Of course, this comes from Valeris and is pulled in from the same system we're right now showing it in, and it's going to go there. This is live for the card swipe, but I can go back and ask for that live image to be shown and do a playback and go back and forth and do an export and all that. Let's pop this one up so you can see it a little closer. I'll hit the button to pop the player out. And you can see on the left that we can jump 30 seconds back, which is going to open something that should be familiar right now, the Valeris player. It's the same one that you saw on the thumbnails. It's the same one you see on Valeris's monitoring. So the user learning curve is very, very low because you can just go and do your playback the way you're used to it. All the controls are there, the export is there, and everything is available for you. Excellent and very, very simple integration. And important to say, Valerus VAX camera integration doesn't carry a license for the integration. If your Valeris system is in place and licensed and your VAX is in place and licensed, the integration is given away for free. Let me close that. And before we go through some questions here, I'd like to talk about the Valeris tiers and a little bit about licensing and upgrades, because it's very important to understand what happens when you come from Valeris 1.1 moving to 1.2 and in the future. One, as far as our pricing model, we strongly believe that our pricing model has the simplest tier structure in the market. We have really 3 tiers. One of them is our free try tier, which you can just download the software and run it on your system for no charge. So it's really half a tier if you want to talk about it. And the paid tiers, we have only 2, Core and Pro. Not 12 different tiers with confusing matrices of which one does what and how is one going to work and how's the other one going to work. Third-party cameras work with Valeris. We did say we are open platform. We use the ONVIF standard. Any third-party cameras that you buy will be, if they're ONVIF, they'll be able to work with Valeris. However, we do encourage people to buy the Vicon cameras. And the way we do that is that our licenses for a Vicon video channel, meaning using a Vicon camera, is heavily discounted versus if you bring your own, let's say Sony or Axis, which is fine. You can absolutely do that. We will incentivize you to get the cameras and the licenses for those from us. And we believe that we can give you extremely competitive prices. Looking at our per channel prices, we are right there with everybody, if not lower. Optional upgrade protection plan. I'm going to talk about it a little bit in the next slide, but it's important to explain that we do not force anyone to buy any kind of support update plan or any kind of yearly recurring program that without it you're not going to get support and you're not going to get upgrades and you're not going to get all that. We believe that if you bought a system, we can show you what we can do for you and try and convince you to buy our upgrade protection plan, but we're not going to tie your support to it and we're not going to tie your upgrades to it. And another important thing here is that we do support unlimited number of servers. So you're not paying a license for a server. If tomorrow you want to add an NVR and split some of the load and move some of the cameras around, we don't charge you for that server, for the NVR. We only charge licenses for the channel. So I did mention UPP, and I think it's important to touch on that real quick. UPP is an upgrade protection plan. Let's look at the left side of the slide here for a second and say, let's assume that you bought your system at Valeris 1.1, and you chose not to buy the UPP from us. Valeris updates that come with 1.2, and that means bug fixes and software corrections and enhancements and some cosmetic changes, things like that, are available whether you have a UPP in place or not. And not only we allow you to upgrade to get all the fixes and always be on the last version, because nobody likes the answer, well, you know, backwards compatibility is the problem, you got to pay for an upgrade. There is no questions about backwards compatibility. So now that Valeris 1.2 is out, you can get it from the website and update your 1.1 system. Whether you have a UPP in place or not, you're still going to enjoy bug fixes, enhancements, and cosmetics. What you're not going to get in this case, is the new feature. So, for example, we looked at museum search. That's a feature in 1.2 that's going to be added to your system, but it's going to be locked, and you won't be able to use it. You're still running the latest code, but because you didn't have an upgrade protection plan, it's not going to be usable. Some people are just going to say, that's fine by me. I don't want the new features. I like what I have. I'm not willing to do that. Again, UPP is not tied to support. If you need support, you will get your support. If you need bug fixes, they'll be included here. And you want to be on the latest system, and support is going to say, hey, go ahead and do that. It costs you nothing. Now, the UPPs are offered, if you want to buy them, when you buy the system, in a 1-year, 3-year, and 5-year packages. So it can be a yearly recurring thing, or it can be less than that. And just to give you a quick feel of the numbers we're talking about here, at the top tier, the 3-year package, we're looking at something like MSRP around $60 to cover you for 3 years. If you have a UPP in place, when you go ahead and do that upgrade, you still get, of course, the enhancements and bug fixes and everything, but also all the new features are automatically unlocked for you. So upgrades as well as new features, for a price, please ask us. Ask your Vicon rep. Price that is the lowest in the market. So this really is the end of the presentation, but we still have a little bit of time. I'd like to try and answer a few of the questions that were typed in and try and use this time for that. What we're going to do is please feel free to add more questions. Just type them into your question bar on the webinar. And at the end of this, we'll take all the questions, we'll wrap them up. I'll do a Q&A document, and we'll make sure to email it to all of you, as well as post it on the website. And I did see some questions asking whether the slides and the information is going to be available. Absolutely. We will wrap this whole thing together and post it on our website, so you can go up there and download the whole webinar and do whatever you need with it. Watch it or use it for your demos. So first question I'm getting here is a question about Valeris and VAX. I like that question. Is it now integrated only to Valeris and are other video systems supported? So the answer is no. Actually, VAX can be sold as its own system. We love selling these together. It used to be integrated and still is with our former Vicon VMS. It's also integrated with Milestone and with others. So we are adding to VAX and allowing it to work with others. We think we can be extremely competitive if you buy them together, VAX and Valeris. Oh, good question about UPP. I'm reading from the bottom up, as you can see. If I do not have a UPP for my system, can I add one today after I bought my system? I assume that's the question. The answer is yes, you can buy a UPP later on. We have a program there, and depending on when you buy it, we actually comp you a full quarter worth of UPP to bring you into the fold. So UPP doesn't have to be purchased right at the day of the purchase. It can be purchased on later. If you don't want to buy a UPP and you do want to enable features, by the way, you can buy an ad hoc feature upgrade as well. So there's all kinds of options depending on how you want to handle your system. When do you expect, another question, when do you expect you'll have a migration option from existing Vicon VMS to Valeris? That's a great question. We are currently working on our December release, which will be Valeris 1.3, and that release will have a solution in there to be able to start moving Vicon-based systems into Valeris environment. These are really two different code-based systems, so we do need to create a migration path and a solution. I imagine that we're going to have a very, very extensive plan to show you when we'll do the webinar for the next version. Excellent question. How many monitors can a Valeris client support? We offer them in a 2 and a 4 options. The client can go on more than that. We tested up to 6 monitors. Then when you start loading up video, most computers or normal size computers kind of have enough. But technically, it's a browser window, so it can open many more. Can Valeris run on virtual machines? The answer is absolutely yes. We offer Valeris in 2 ways. We offer it pre-installed on our factory-certified hardware. But if you have your own computers or you want to run it in a virtual machine environment, we absolutely allow it, and you can download the software and register it and do everything you need to do. The one thing we ask, which is kind of obvious, is build your virtual machine up to spec. And we actually have a white paper on our website that explains what that means. Can I test Valeris? Oh, yes, you can. Valeris is on our website, and we provide with Valeris 30 days fully open, no license, so you can download it and connect your cameras and play with it and test it. And then you can actually even activate it as the free version. So that would be very easy for you to play around with it and test it. I'm getting a couple more questions. Is license plate recognition in the OCR able to read a non-reflective license plate? So we integrate with different license plate manufacturers and solutions, and depending on the manufacturer, some of them offer different capabilities. We don't have our own license plate right now. This is something that's in the works. So it all depends on who's the partner we integrate with. Good question about delay. What's the delay between real-time and video displayed in the browser? We tried, kind of our spec is to be able to not exceed about 300 millisecond latency in the live video. So that's what we strive to do, and so far it looks like we're on target. One more question before we have to wrap this up. Do we have a mechanism for integrators to develop their own plugins? The answer is yes. We do offer a full API allowing to connect to Valeris and pull in video and cameras and information and give back. It is a full web-based API. We require a signature on an API agreement, but we do encourage that, and we would certainly like to offer that to everybody. I'm going to thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure being here today. We're kind of running out of time for questions, and I don't want to drag this beyond the time that was allotted. So I'm going to give this stage back to Dolores, and thank you again.
Yes, thanks again, everybody. We really appreciate you being on our webinar today. We'd ask you to please take a moment at the end and participate in our short survey. Thanks again today, and we will see you next time.